If you want to write stories your readers will love, there are 3 things you need to do. Understand storytelling principles, see how other writers have applied those principles, and then use them in your own work. Here on the Story Nerd podcast, our goal is to demystify story theory. We'll help you with the first 2 steps so that you can get started with the third. I'm Melanie Hill, writer, editor, and poet, and I help writers find solutions to their story problems so they can finish their work.
And I'm Valerie Francis. I'm a writer and a literary editor, and I teach women who are writing in all genres how stories work so they can finish the books faster and without frustration.
On today's What Went Right episode, Valerie chose The Princess Bride. This 1987 film was directed by Rob Reiner from a screenplay by William Goldman. Now, of course, there will be spoilers because we can't talk about the movie without talking about the movie. And please help other writers find our show by leaving a rating and review. For Apple Podcast listeners, you can do it right from your phone. Simply go to the show's landing page and scroll to the bottom. It's that simple. All right, Valerie, it's an oldie but a goodie, and sometimes we have found things that we may not have wanted to find when we do favourite movies. So how did you go with The Princess Bride?
I love this movie. I just love it. And all week I have been saying again, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And saying, inconceivable. I mean, it's just so much fun to say those things. And watching this movie again for the, 30th time, 50th time. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. It was just as fun. It was just as entertaining. And I am going to love it no matter what I find. When I'm able to put it, because this is sort of a job hazard we have. We can read a book or watch a film that we really love if we've got our editor hat on and we're going to really dissect the thing. Sometimes we find warts and sometimes we don't. And it's okay. I don't think perfection is a fair standard. If it's a weakness in a plot or a character or just in the storytelling that you only notice when you are doing a deep dive at the level of craft and you don't notice it in the 50 times that you watched it previously, yeah, you're all good. Everything's good. It's all good. I mean, this is William Goldman. The chance of finding a weakness in the storytelling is slim. William Goldman on a bad day is still better than most people on their best day. That's what we're dealing with here. So listen, to be honest, The Princess Bride, what does it do right? Well, pretty much everything. The screenplay, like I said, was written by William Goldman and it's based on his novel. And, when you're at that caliber of writer, it's a safe bet that the story is going to work. And then you add Rob Reiner and his vision and an amazing cast. It is no wonder that this movie stood the test of time. Now, in saying that, when it was released, it flopped in theaters because the studio had no idea how to market the thing. So it was a marketing weakness, not a storytelling weakness. But listen, when you have a great story like this, somehow or other, it's going to find its audience. Pride and Prejudice wasn't a hit when it was released either. And it also found its audience over time. It's 212 years later, we're still talking about the thing. Okay, so like I said, when you study a film or a novel that you really love, there's a risk that you could find flaws. And, for some reason, Melanie, when I work with authors or I'm talking to authors and I say things like this, people become very defensive. I don't know why. I think it's perfectly fine for something to have a quote unquote flaw. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think it needs to be received as a harsh criticism, merely as an awareness of, we understand story at the level now that we see that now and we didn't see it before. Oh, that's kind of cool. So, yeah, like I said, I don't think perfect is a fair standard. No story is ever going to be perfect. It's written by humans, and we are, by our very nature, imperfect. Now, we want to make the stories that we're writing the best that they can possibly be, which means we have to do our due diligence to make sure our plots are watertight as we can get them anyway, to make sure our characters are as well developed as we possibly can make them. Sometimes, though, there's, like I said, there's warts, and we just decide that we're going to love it, warts and all. Now, there is one area in the Princess Bride that is a bit like chewing on tinfoil for me. And that is the representation of the two female characters, Buttercup and Valerie. I love having a character, named after me, but why does she have to be the crone? But in saying that, I have to recognize that Goldman was writing in a very traditional fantasy style. And so, therefore, he was using the standard tropes, the standard character archetypes. He was working within the female archetypes. Still, the feminist in me rebels against it. I mean, I really do wish that Buttercup would have jumped in and helped Wesley when the ROUSs were attacking him. And it kind of bothered me that she just stood there and said, "My Wesley will save me." Well, save yourself, lady. Come on, let's get moving. So there was a part of me that kind of thought, save yourself. Don't wait for Wesley to come and get you. But then that's not how these types of stories work. So that's not a fair comment. Can you write a feminist fairy tale? Yeah. Yep, you can. But The Princess Bride is not that. Buttercup is the maiden archetype. Valerie is the crone archetype. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please go back to season 10, because Melanie did some excellent, excellent work on female protagonists and the various female archetypes. I really love the work you did that season, Melanie. And at the time I said we need to circle back and study it, I hold true to that. At some point, we got to circle back and study this in more detail, because there's lots of work to be done there. All right, so let me get back to The Princess Bride here. I could talk about it for 2 hours. I'm probably starting to close in on 2 hours already, but let me keep myself on track. There's so many things I could focus on here in The Princess Bride that I really had to discipline myself to talk about only two. That's the framing story and the clear objects of desire. Let me take that second one first. Last week, I said that one of the problems in The Golden Compass is that Lyra's object of desire was not clearly established until quite late into the story. By contrast, in The Princess Bride, the objects of desire are established clearly and quickly. So you got a grandpa. He wants to bond with his grandson and pass down a family tradition. His father read The Princess Bride to him. He read it to his son, and now he's going to read it to his grandson. And because he has gifted the book to his grandson, and the grandson ends up loving the story, we can safely, he loves the story, yes, and he loves spending time with his grandpa, right? We can assume, therefore, that when he grows up, one of these days, he is going to keep this tradition alive by reading this book to his son and maybe even his grandson. Then we have Wesley and Buttercup. They're in love. And what do they want? They want to live happily ever after. This is the main plot line for the film. Then we have Inigo Montoya. He wants to revenge his father's death by finding and killing the six-fingered man. And then, of course, we have Prince Humperdinck. Humperdinck is a fun word to say. Prince Humperdinck, he wants to start a war with the neighboring kingdom of Gilder, so he has Vizzini and his sidekicks kidnap Buttercup. So these are the objects of desire. They are established very quickly, and they're very clearly. Grandpa's object of desire is in the first couple of minutes, as is Wesley's and Buttercup's. Inigo's object of desire is established very soon after we meet him, and Vizzini establishes the kidnap/war plot very soon after we meet him. So we're never, ever wondering who these characters are, what do they want, what are they up to. Like, as soon as they are on screen, we sort of get their deal. So this brings me to the framing story, which is particularly interesting to me. framing stories are one of those devices that either work brilliantly or not at all. There doesn't seem to be an in-between when it comes to framing stories. In The Princess Bride, it's a brilliant example of how to get a framing story to work, why to use a framing story. And again, this is no surprise because it's William Goldman and he is a master storyteller. But here in The Princess Bride, the framing story is not merely a device. It is functioning as the heart of the story. The fairy tale with Buttercup and Wesley is funny and it's entertaining, but it's the relationship between the grandfather and the grandson that gives the reader or the audience an opportunity to have a true emotional connection to the story. The framing story enhances the love story. It bookends the film with stellar in and out scenes. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to the work I did on season 3. In the beginning, Grandpa enters the room to read the book. In the end, Grandpa finishes reading the book and exits the room. Now, there's more to in and out than that, but like I said, I went into all of that, the theory and loads of examples back in season 3, so definitely check that out. But this is a beautiful example of it. What I want to focus on here right now is how the grandson feels in these moments when we're in the bedroom with the grandfather and the grandson. So in the beginning, the grandson dreads having his grandfather come and spend time with him. He would much rather play his video games than even have to talk to his grandpa. And he sure doesn't want to have a book read to him. And if a book must be read, it should have sports in it and not be a quote unquote kissing book. But in the end, the grandson actually asks his grandfather to come back again the next day and read the book to him again. The grandfather's response is, "As you wish," which we know from the opening means "I love you." In the middle of the story, things that happen in the fairy tale are creating opportunities for the grandpa and the grandson to connect and to build their relationship. Let me just give you a couple of examples. So when the grandfather is reading that Buttercup married Prince Humperdinck, it starts a conversation between them about fairness and about life not always being fair. When Wesley dies, the grandson's outraged. Like this is just an injustice on a cosmic level for him. It's not how it should be, and he's angry. And the grandfather says, "Oh well, this book is upsetting you. We'll stop reading it now." And he gets up to leave the bedroom, but the grandson, who remember did not want to spend time with his grandfather, the grandson actually asks him to stay. And this is a huge turning point in their relationship. And it's lovely. It's just really heartwarming. Now, it works the other way around too. The film cuts back to the framing story in a way that adds tension to the fairy tale. For example, the audience is dying to see the kiss between Wesley and Buttercup. But when the grandson is grossed out by a quote unquote kissing story, we get yanked away from the kiss that we want to see, and we get yanked back into the bedroom with the grandson and the grandpa. The filmmakers, Rob Reiner, makes us wait for the kiss. And that is creating tension in us. And when you create tension in your reader or your viewer, it engages them in the story. It makes them turn the page. It holds their attention. So tension creates attention. And that's exactly what they're doing here. So they're playing the framing story off against the love story in a way that serves both storylines. Now, I could go on and on, but I will respect everyone's time and hand the mic over to Melanie. So how did you go with The Princess Bride this week, Melanie?
Well, like you, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I've read the book. And in fact, I have 2 copies of the book because I've got a special edition copy as well that came out a few years ago for the anniversary. So I'm a big fan. And I was really nervous about analysing the movie because I didn't want to ruin it for myself. And there are parts of the movie that I do now see differently, but and that's not always a bad thing. But I will keep them to myself. But like it's still one of my favorites, right? So this week I'm going to focus on the multi-plot aspects of the story, because we've had a few interesting multi-plot stories on the podcast that did not work so well. And Nashville, I'm looking at you. I'm still traumatized by that movie, I think. And I'm going to lightly touch on some of the feminine and masculine story structures in the movie as well. Now, Valerie's already mentioned the objects of desire for the Grandpa, Inigo, Prince Humperdinck, and Wesley and Buttercup. And I'm going to throw Fezzik in there too, because he's an interesting character in the structure of the movie. Now, the main protagonists appear to be Grandpa, Wesley, Buttercup, and Inigo. But I will talk about Fezzik and Prince Humperdinck a little bit later. Now, what multi-plot stories should do is organise themselves around a theme. And Goldman does this really well, because most of the storylines are about love. There's romantic love, paternal love, familial love, found family, and no love. So romantic love is the central type of love represented by Wesley and Buttercup. Inigo's object of desire is driven by his love for his father and the grief he feels after his father is murdered by the six-fingered man. Fezzik, although it's not stated, responds to the band of brother bonds in his work for Vizzini, and then also later with Wesley and Inigo. So there's very much this kind of family love that he, I think, searches for and looks for and actually creates in the movie. And it's interesting. That's what he does as a character in this story. And it's largely his relationship with the movie is largely representative of a very popular narrative at the moment, which is found family. Now, the antagonist to all types of love is Prince Humperdinck, and he has no love. So he is the force of antagonism for the Florin love stories. And Humperdinck doesn't have time for love because he wants to go to war with Gilda. And then if we look at the framing story, we see that the grandson doesn't want to spend time with his grandfather because he'd rather play a baseball game on his computer. So there are echoes of Humperdinck in that relationship. But the love of the grandfather, or the love that he has for his grandson, and the growing appreciation that the grandson has towards his grandfather is all about familial love. And they grow, and that grows as they read the book together. So that's a really lovely representation of the theme of love throughout the movie. Now, at the beginning of the story, Inigo and Fezzik work for Humperdinck. They are on the side of no love, although Fezzik is searching for family and Inigo wants revenge for his father's murder, which is also about love. But it's not until Wesley defeats both Fezzik and Inigo and separates them from Vizzini that they can follow a path towards finding what they want. So that path also involves partnering with Wesley to rescue Buttercup and face the six-finger man, who does work too for Prince Humperdinck. Now, from a plotting point of view, the threads of the multi-plot are contained within the story setting and they remain on theme. The cast has been created to provide Wesley, Buttercup, and Inigo with aligned antagonists. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you were to write down the three protagonists' name on one side of a sheet of paper and the antagonists of Humperdinck and the six-fingered man on the other side, you will see that at any given time in the movie, you can draw a line from the protagonists from one of the protagonists to one of the antagonists. And that antagonist is directly stopping them from reaching their object of desire. So, for example, once Wesley is captured and taken to the pit of despair, he is then tortured by the six-fingered man while Humperdinck is planning the wedding to Buttercup. For Inigo, the six-fingered man is elusive and hidden by Humperdinck, although, not knowingly, I suppose. Buttercup is a pawn in Humperdinck's desire for war, and when she changes her mind, Humperdinck and the six-fingered man keep her from Wesley. So you can see all the interconnections between the protagonist and the antagonist just by that simple breakdown. By centering the story around the themes of love and using different examples of love and using two forces of antagonism for all the plot line, it helps the story work really well. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about the use of the hero's journey and Gail Carriger's heroine's journey because I see both elements in this movie. Now, Inigo and Wesley are heroes, and their plot points mostly align with the hero's journey. Both face their antagonists by themselves. Yes, for Wesley, Buttercup is in the room, but she actually doesn't contribute to the face-off between Wesley and Humperdinck. Wesley defeats Humperdinck with words and a sword, and Buttercup at this point of the film is Wesley's prize for defeating Humperdinck. Now, I'll even go so far as to say that as a character, I think she is part stereotype and part archetype. But we're not going to go too far into that. Inigo's storyline depends on him fighting the six-fingered man and beating him to get revenge for his father. Inigo also does this alone in the banquet hall and defeats him. Now, however, Fezzik is more heroine than hero in the story. He brings people together and facilitates outcomes for the other two men. His found family is with Inigo, Wesley, and at the end, Buttercup joins them. The movie finishes with the four of them riding off into the sunset together. And this is a feminine ending to the movie, according to the heroine's journey. And the heroine's journey, amongst other things, is all about networking, compromise, and connection. This is what Fezzik brings to the story. He's so strong, even that he grips up four people and carries them up the face of the cliffs of insanity. So that is a physical representation, or it's very symbolic of what he is doing in the story. And as part of his character and part of his consideration for fairness, he even fires a warning shot at Wesley so that they can have a fair fight. However, this is really interesting. Fezzik isn't given an ending like Inigo is. And that's because the four heroes together is his ending. Inigo has to remain a lone hero and become the dread pirate Roberts because that is the type of character that he is. And it's interesting that this story uses the different characters to hit story points in both of these frameworks. But the hero's journey is the dominant framework, even though this is a romance. Now, what I want you to take away from this is that in a multi-plot story, you can use different structures for different characters. And I'll just make a bit of an advert for season 17 as we look forward to that. I would like to point out that most of the characters in The Princess Bride are constant characters, and the only ones with arcs are Inigo and the grandson. Now, this is not a criticism at all. This is storytelling gold because it absolutely works for this story. All right, Valerie, what is your bottom line from this What Went Right episode?
Well, the level of writing here in The Princess Bride is extremely high. It's easy to pass this one off as a silly fairy tale, as something lighthearted, as a kid's movie. But for the story to work, for the comedy to work, it requires a master storyteller like William Goldman. So I guess that what I'd say here for the bottom line is don't dismiss a story because it seems on the surface to be lighthearted or silly or satiric or a spoof or for kids. Just because it looks simple, just because it looks easy, doesn't mean that it is simple or that it is easy. These can be some of the best crafted stories you will ever come across because, frankly, there's zero room for error. What about you, Melanie? What is the bottom line for you with The Princess Bride?
This is a great example of how a multi-plot story works by using a central theme for all the characters and creating a scenario where the antagonists can be used against different protagonists. And it's key that each character has a clear object of desire. Get the basics right, and you could have a cult favourite on your hands like The Princess Bride.
That wraps it up for this week and for this season. We would love to know what you think of this What Went Right episode. And of course, if there is a film that you would like us to take a look at, feel free to reach out to us via email or social media. Next week, we start season 17. So come join us as we discuss The Man Who Knew Too Much. To support the show, please leave us a rating and review and tell your writer friends about us. For more information about our online training, visit storynerd.ca/courses. To join my inner circle, go to valeriefrancis.ca/inner-circle. And for tips about books to help you read like a writer, visit Melanie at melaniehill.au. And remember, story theory doesn't have to be difficult. It's a tool to help you write more, not less. So take it one step at a time and have fun.